Hey, what's up guys, LMC here, and today's a bit of a grey day here in Melbourne, but there's a bit of blue sky showing, so that's good enough for me. I'm out for a ride heading to my friend's place actually, and I thought I'd just talk quickly about what made me decide to get this bike that I'm on. So if you watched my previous video, my first one, you'll know that I'm riding a 2014 CB500F. So what I wanted to do was basically talk about why I decided to get this bike, but not just this bike specifically, but also why I decided to get a bike of this size and basically a brand new bike. So if you ride a bike here in Victoria, when you first get your license, you're restricted by what kind of bike you can ride. And give him a quick nod, don't know who that was, but he had a vest on, so he's probably learning as well. Anyway, sorry. Yeah, so you're restricted on the kind of bike you can ride when you first get your license, and I'm sure this is similar kind of practice that goes on in other parts of the world. But up until October last year, that restriction period lasted 12 months. So you got your license, you had to ride some sort of basic, low powered bike for the first year of your license, and then after that you go get whatever you wanted. But after October last year they changed it. So now, if you're like me, your restriction period is 3 years, which is a lot longer, which sucks. I must admit, if I had got my act together sooner, I probably would have if I had known that the rules were changing, rather, I probably would have got my act together sooner and got my license before October last year, just so I could get off my restriction period much sooner. But you live and learn. So here I am with a restricted license for 3 years. And so given that, I thought, well, that's kind of what motivated me to get a new bike and a kind of bigger bike. Now, I use the word bigger loosely here because I know that a 500cc bike, well, I think it's a little bit less than that, but around about a 500cc bike like this one is obviously quite small in the grand scheme of things. But as far as learner approved bikes are concerned, then it's on the upper end. So here in Victoria, you can ride anything, well, not anything, you can ride a whole host of bikes that are up to about 650ccs. You can't ride all 650cc motorbikes, but there are quite a few on the list that you can ride. And then of course you can ride heaps and heaps of bikes that are smaller than that. So this one, which is 500cc's, and then lots of people choose to get 300 or 250 or even 125cc bikes. And so so a 500cc is kind of up on the larger end of a learner approved bike. And so that restriction period, the one year changing into 3 years, is what really motivated me to get a bigger, larger bike, because I thought, well, I'm going to be sitting on this thing for 3 whole years. I don't want to outgrow it too quickly. I want it to last me, so I thought I'd get something that was as big as I was comfortable riding straight away, basically. Now, I'm not naive. I'm pretty sure that by the end of the 3 year period I'm going to be absolutely busting to get onto a bigger, more powerful bike. In fact, I'm fairly sure I'll outgrow this thing, at least within 2 years. But, such is life. I've just got to suck it up. Yeah, so that I just wanted to essentially reduce the likelihood that I would grow out of this, or at least sort of prolong the inevitable, as it was, by getting a nice big bike. So with that in mind, I looked at quite a few different bikes. I looked at the Triumph Street Triple, because the Triumph has got a Street Triple 660, which is kind of a smaller version of their Street Triple that meets the requirements to be learner approved here in Victoria. And I looked at, of course, some bikes from Yamaha. I looked at the MT-07 as well as the XJ6N. So they're kind of 600cc bikes. They're a bit bigger than this one. I looked at a couple of other Hondas. So I looked at the fully fared version of this, which is the the CBR500R. And I Looked at some Kawasaki's, so I looked at the, let's go in here. I looked at some Kawasaki's, like the Ninjas, but they were a little bit smaller, so that's why I kind of steered away from them. Let's scoot around here, and then let's cheekily go out here. I'm pretty sure doing this is illegal. I don't think you're meant to use fast food restaurants as a way of getting around a left turn, but oh well. No one called me. Where was I? What else did I look at? I think that's basically it. So I looked at Triumph, Kawasaki, Honda, and Yamaha. Those were basically the main bikes I looked at. Now immediately, the other thing that kind of factored into my decision making was price. I kind of figured, well, even though I'm going to have this bike for 3 years, it is still just a stepping stone bike. It is a bike I know I'm upgrading from in a few years to something bigger and better. So I also wanted to keep the price of my first bike down as low as was reasonable. You know, I mean, if I only had a restriction period of 1 year, I would have definitely got something around the sort of $4,000 or $5,000 mark, probably second-hand and quite small. But because of the restriction period extension, this bike was about $8,000. So that's what I went for. But so I immediately ruled out the Triumph, because a brand new Triumph Street Triple 660 here in Australia at least is like 12 or 13 grand, and I looked online for some second-hand ones that were like 1 or 2 years old, and people still wanted about 10 grand for them. And I mean, I just thought, one, I thought that was too much. I thought 13 grand for my very first bike, and I've never ridden anything before, and there's a good chance I was going to damage it or come off it. I thought 13 grand was just too much. And 10 grand for a second-hand one seemed silly to me, because the proper Street Triple, so the Street Triple 675R, the big boy Street Triple, was about 10 grand second-hand as well. So there's all these people trying to sell these little 660 kind of neutered versions of the Street Triple for the same price as all of the proper Street Triples were going for. And I mean, I don't know if they're worth that or not, but I just thought there's no way I can bring myself to spending the same amount of money on a bike I know is kind of like a, as I said, a neutered version of its big brother. You know, I kind of felt like, there's no way I can part way with 10 grand for the weak version of the bike. I thought I much prefer just to wait until I'm off the restriction period, and then if I still really like Triumph bikes, then maybe I'll look at the Street Triple 675R, the proper one. So I crossed the Street Triple off the list. Then the bikes from Kawasaki I crossed off pretty quickly. Not that they were bad, like the Ninjas, you know, the Ninja 300 was an awesome little bike, but it kind of didn't fit in with the whole get the biggest, most powerful bike you can get, because it is, you know, small, it's only 300cc. They also have like a 650cc learner approved Ninja, but I didn't like the style of that bike. Basically, the Ninja 650L, I think it's called, and that Ninja is much more like a sports touring thing, so it's much taller, much more upright, and it just didn't really appeal to me, that style of bike. I wanted something that was, yeah, look, just a bit suitable for commuting, but also had a bit of a sportiness to it. So I crossed that one off as well. So that was me done with Triumph and Kawasaki. Next was Yamaha. Now Yamaha was much harder to rule out, because the two bikes I looked at were really nice. I mean, the MT-07, that bike kind of needs no introduction right now. Anyone who's looking at motorbikes will have come across the MT-07. It's brand new from Yamaha. It's sort of I think it's about 600 cc's, or around about 600 cc's, parallel twin, very similar to this bike, just a bit bigger, a bit more powerful, but it's also a bit more expensive. So, you know, this bike retails for 8 grand out the door. The MT-07 retails for 10 grand out the door. And because they're brand new and they've only just come out onto the market, I couldn't find any dealership or anybody who was going to essentially compromise on that 10 grand price. I couldn't find anyone who would talk to me. They're just like, nah, it's 10 grand, take it or go away. So I went away, basically. I thought, no, because that extra 2 grand gets you on the road with everything else. You know, with that 2 grand, you can set yourself up with some good gear to get started with. I mean, not the top of the line gear, but some decent gear. And also, in my case, it set me up with the first year of insurance. So by getting this bike for 8 grand, I was able to take that additional 2 grand and get everything I needed to get on the road straight away. Whereas if I'd chosen the Yamaha, I'd have been on the road for like, you know, 12 grand or something. And even though I really liked the MT-07, I didn't think it was 2 grand better than this bike. You know, they didn't feel that much more powerful, the Yamaha that is, because I test rode them both. I mean, on paper it is, apparently it's got a little bit more horsepower, it's obviously slightly bigger displacement, but it didn't feel much more powerful to me. It didn't feel any more or less comfortable. If anything, this Honda, the CB500F, was more comfortable for me. I mean, obviously your mileage will vary on that, but that was just my sort of my experience. So I kind of just couldn't see where the 2 grand was, and I couldn't really see why I should spend the extra 2 grand, basically. Then the XJ6, which is a slightly older bike. I mean, I was looking at a 2014 model of it, but the XJ6 as a bike in itself has been around a lot longer. I really liked that one because it had a 4-cylinder engine, and I really loved the sound of it. But I ultimately ended up just crossing that one off my list for the same reason that I crossed the Triumph off, which was that they were too expensive. The dealership that I was looking at wanted, you know, sort of, I think they're like 11 grand new. I found one dealership that would do a deal and take it down to 10 grand, so it was the same price as the MT-07. But again, I wanted to have I was making a budget conscious decision, like I said earlier, so I ultimately, and rather painfully, scratched the Yamahas from my list for that reason. Stones, what are they doing here? Leveled that place. Can't even remember what was there. Isn't that bad? You live in an area all your life, you see the buildings that are around, you know, every month you ride past them, drive past them, whatever you do, and then the moment they're gone, you forget what was there in the first place. Sorry, I'm getting distracted. Yeah, so that's what kind of led me to this bike. It was super cheap. I mean, 8 grand, I couldn't find a bike like it for that price. I think Honda was really going ultra cheap on these bikes. That's not to say it's a bad bike. I think it's a great bike. It's just a really good value bike. It's not perfect. There are a few little bits and pieces I don't like about it, but it is it's definitely a really, really nice bike. But I'm going to get into those things in another video. But yeah, that's it from me today, guys. That was all I wanted to talk about. Just wanted to touch on why I chose this bike. In my next video, or coming up really soon, I'm probably going to give you a bit more of like an owner's review on this bike, tell you what I like, what I don't like more specifically, from a learner's perspective. And also, if you're enjoying the content, please subscribe, because I've got a couple more videos coming up where I take a look at a couple of other bikes on the market for learners. So I'm going to do a video on the Ninja 300, and I'm also going to do a video on the brother to this bike, which is the fared version, the CB500R. So I'm going to compare those two to this bike, tell you what I like, tell you what's different. Yeah. But that's it for me, guys, and I'll see you in the next video. See ya!